Last summer, in August, 40 degrees Celsius heat. My nephew, 17-year-old male, consumed too much alcohol at my son's wedding. He asked my husband and me, 43-year-old female, for a ride back to the hotel earlier in the evening so that his sister didn't have to wait for him. On our way back to the hotel, he ended up vomiting all over the interior of my vehicle and all over me. He was in the back seat, and I was in the front. There were no warnings or cracked windows. Everything stayed inside the vehicle. This happened twice before I finally made him put his head out the window for the rest of the drive. The drive was 1 hour long. I dropped him off at the hotel, got him in the bathroom, and told his older sister to keep an eye on him to ensure he wouldn't aspirate or hurt himself, so I black out. I then tried to find a car wash or even a Walmart to buy buckets and scrub brushes, etc. At 1 a.m. in a very small city in northern Alberta, there were none. It took my husband and me nearly 3 hours to remove the majority of the liquid and chunks, but it was still not completely clean. We found a 7-Eleven. My husband, daughter, and I had to drive 10 hours home in the summer heat with the smell. We had adjoining rooms with my nephews and nieces, so I checked on my nephew later, and he was in pain, but definitely surviving. I briefly spoke with him the next morning in the elevator on our way out to the vehicles, and I told him to call me when he got home and sorted things out. He never called or texted. I texted his mother, my sister-in-law, who was 40, the following day, assuming he or his sisters had already told her, but they hadn't. She was harvesting, so she works 16-hour days and can't really use a cell phone in the trucks due to the noise. I told her what happened and asked her to call to discuss what she would like to do. I received no response. When my husband and I got home, I called some detailing services and got quotes: $500, $2,500 for biological level cleaning. I decided to buy my own equipment, which cost about $500. Power scrub brush, pressure steamer, various cleaning products, and air freshener bombs. I spent 2 days getting every nook and cranny clean, even undoing bolts to reach the seat hardware and ensure there was no liquid anywhere. The vomit was in the headliner and every possible crack. I was mad, but I wasn't mad about having to clean up the car. I was mad about not receiving a single call or text from my nephew or his mother. I waited for a month, assuming they were busy with harvest or kids going back to school, etc. I composed a text, but never sent it. I waited until we were together again at Thanksgiving. I sat down with my nephew and his mother, my sister-in-law, and explained that I had been expecting a call or something but never received it. I explained how much it cost and said that I would like him to think about how much time he would have to work to pay for it. I told him I felt it would be unreasonable to ask him to give me that much money, but he needed to find a way to make things right. I asked when he would be able to take some time off from school and work on the farm, and we ended up agreeing that Easter break would be the best time. He could pay me back by spending some time together. As a side note, and relevant, my nephew's father, my brother, died suddenly 2 years ago, and my nephew is one of the most kind, loving, and sensitive boys I know. I loved his father, and I love him very much. I don't live nearby, so I don't have as close of a relationship with him as I would like. Since my brother died, it has been even harder to spend time with his children, and I feel very excluded from their lives. This feeling is especially strong when they go on vacations with my younger sister, who is single and has no kids of her own, and they don't even tell me about it until the day before they're heading to the airport to go to Mexico. I walked away from our conversation expecting that my nephew and I would be spending the week together during Easter break. I texted my nephew today to ask when he would be coming, and he responded that he had to work and take driver's ed during the break. I responded, "Well, that's certainly disappointing. When do you think you will have time to do what we agreed to back in October? I had made plans expecting you to be here." I wanted to say more about how this is not how you treat family and how hurt I am, but I tried to avoid blaming him and said nothing else. I then texted his mother. "I just wanted to touch base with you about our conversation with nephew and me back in October. I thought we had agreed that he would come up for the week at Easter to make things right. Have I missed something? Is there an alternative plan you guys have? I just texted him to see if he needed a ride or if he had transportation up here. And he tells me that he is working and has driver's ed. Is there another time that works? While my husband feels that it is my sister-in-law's responsibility to teach her child to be accountable and that I should not say anything, I'm not sure what to do. I'm furious and hurt. I don't express my frustrations well, so I'm thinking about cutting off this part of my family. I don't know how else to handle this because if I see them in person and it hasn't been addressed, I will likely be visibly unhappy, although I won't say anything mean or unkind. I just don't know how to handle this better. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I'd like to handle this better, but I'm not sure how. There's no playbook for this. Your brother died, everyone is grieving. You want to spend more time with your sister-in-law and nephew. However, your nephew destroyed your property, didn't apologize, didn't help, didn't even acknowledge. You simultaneously want to teach discipline while forcing interaction, but that won't work. Mourn your brother. That's the empty piece that comes across. Your nephew isn't going to spend time with you to get punished. With the death of his father, he's probably never going to relate to you unless later in life by his choice. You'll have time to reconnect with him at other family milestones. But it takes two to have a relationship, and they don't sound interested. Comment 2. Not to say that the kid doesn't bear some of the blame, but it's definitely worth noting that his mom wasn't at this wedding, and he is a minor. So someone should have been responsible for keeping an eye on him, and I don't see anyone taking a responsibility for that. Nobody should have been serving a minor or letting a minor drink enough alcohol to be projectile vomiting all over the place. If this kid had gotten a little sicker and had to go to the hospital for alcohol poisoning instead of puking in someone's car, I'm sure we'd be blaming a whole different set of people for this situation. Now for the update. Thanks for sticking around for this update. So, after all that mess with my nephew in the car, things just spiraled. My sister-in-law, who I thought would at least have the decency to acknowledge the situation, went silent on me. I mean, not a peep. I was left hanging, wondering if my nephew would ever make good on his promise. But then, out of the blue, she calls me, and guess what? She's not calling to apologize or sort things out. No, she's calling to ask if I can lend her money because they're suddenly in a bind. Can you believe that? I was so taken aback, I didn't know what to say. Here I was, still waiting for some kind of repayment or at least an apology, and she's asking for more. I should have said no, but I didn't. I lent her the money. It felt like the right thing to do at the time, but now I'm not so sure. Meanwhile, my husband's been dealing with his own family drama. His cousin, who's always been a bit of a troublemaker, got caught up in a scandal at work. Turns out he'd been embezzling money, and it was a whole big thing. My husband was so caught up in helping him deal with lawyers and the fallout that we barely had time to talk about our own issues. And then, as if things couldn't get more complicated, my daughter came home one day with news that she's pregnant. She's only 19, and the father is this guy she's been seeing who I've never really trusted. She's scared, and I'm trying to be supportive, but it's just one more thing on my already full plate. In the midst of all this, my nephew finally texts me. He says he's sorry that he's been dealing with a lot and that he's been feeling really guilty about the whole car situation. He offers to come up next weekend to help out around the house, do some chores, anything to make it up to me. I want to believe him, I really do. But after everything, I'm just not sure I can. So I tell him that's fine, that we'll see him next weekend. But deep down, I'm resentful. I feel like I'm being taken advantage of by my own family, and I'm not sure how much more I can take. I'm starting to think that maybe cutting ties is the best option, even though it's the last thing I want to do. Thanks for reading. My brother leeches off me for years, but when he lands in jail and his wife leaves him with a baby on the way, I cut him off and start fixing my own life. The start. My mother brought both me and my brother up when my father passed away at my 17th. We grew up without much contact with our relatives, mostly because we were poor compared to others. That's another story. The thing is, all the relationship I know in my life is my mom and my brother. My mom determined to prove to society and relatives that she can bring up her children without any support from anyone. My father passed away. A year later, I finished my high school, joined university in another city, stayed in a hostel, finished the course in 4 years, and jumped right into work. 2013 in a different city. I visit my mom once a year regularly. I rarely spent time with my family till the mobile phone became pretty common. I didn't have many friends as I had childhood trauma, introverted, and social anxiety, which I'm working on at the moment. My brother, on the other hand, switched 3 colleges and switched 3 courses and ended up not getting a degree and was staying at home until I was 2 years into the work. He got addicted to smoking and was smoking regularly. Brother moved in with me. Then he moved in with me in the city I was working in. He tried freelancing but was not earning much. I was covering the rent, bills, food, and all our expenses when he was staying with me. A few years later, in 2019, I moved to the UK via my company. But I was still paying the rent, bills, and his expenses as he was not earning much. My brother got married to a narcissistic woman. He later found a girl online through his freelance work and decided to marry her. The girl agreed to marry him even though he was not earning. I funded 70% of the marriage expense. It costed me around £8K. My mother was still working at this point. She spent around £3K for the wedding from her life savings. Sister-in-law, SL, moved into the house my brother was staying in. Even though my sister-in-law was working, my brother was paying the rent and covering the bills, which was funded by me. When confronted, this created a conflict between him and sister-in-law. My mom retired. My mother then retired and decided to visit them. My sister-in-law doesn't like my mother staying with them and thought my mother is going to stay with them lifelong. Bear in mind, my mother was living by herself for 10 years at this point, with no contact with any relatives other than me and my brother. This fueled the conflict further, and my mom went back to the hometown and had to come back as my brother got into an accident. My mother was taking care of him when he was hospitalized, as my sister-in-law doesn't know what to do. Mother funded my brother to start a new business. My brother was asking for money to start a business, and mother gave her retirement lump sum £5K to start a business. He spent all the money on renting a place and buying furniture and burned it all in a year. My mother and I were still covering his bills, rent, and expenses as he asked us to support him while he made a breakthrough in his business. I bought a new house and my brother moved into that. My mom insisted on buying a house back home while I can and decided it would reduce the bills and rent for my brother. I won't be living in the house since I don't stay there and I live in the UK. While I live in the UK, my brother can live there with his wife along with my mom as it's a male 3-bedroom house. So then my mother was taking care of managing the house, bills, and cooking food. My sister-in-law just wakes up, eats food, and then my brother drops her at work and picks her back. My brother applied for a divorce. My sister-in-law hated me and my mother for weird reasons. I rarely talked to her. Conflict increased a lot between my brother and sister-in-law. Sister-in-law switched to a new job and started earning more, but still not paying a penny for rent bills and only covered her personal expenses. 2 years after marriage, my brother filed for divorce as the conflicts are too much for him to handle, and it became emotionally hurtful. My sister-in-law moved out of the house. Even after applying for divorce, they were staying in the same house along with my mother, and a few months later, she moved out. My brother helped her find the new house and shift things. He was regularly visiting her, even though he applied for divorce. My mother and I were still supporting him as he was in a vulnerable position and depressed. So we still covered all his expenses. He was depressed and stressed and started smoking more and drinking alcohol. My brother asked me to fund his divorce. Recently, my brother asked me to fund his divorce hearing, which is happening soon, and asked me for £1K. And he still visits her. I was so confused and frustrated. All the while he blames me and my mother for his life situation. He is now living with my mom in the house that I bought. Me and my mother enabled my brother for too long, and we almost spent £100K in the last 11 years on him. All the while he is financially irresponsible and not accountable for his actions and blames us and guilts us if we asked him questions. I was doing this because I have no other relationships than him and my mom. Edit, I was focused on writing the situation that I forgot to write that. I would need advice on how to effectively set boundaries with my brother, whom I share a close bond with. Some tips on how to communicate and make things understood. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Yes. I realized it a bit late, a few years back, as I was naive and thought family mattered most, and trusted my brother a lot when everyone else stopped trusting him. My mom had heated arguments with him, but still chose to support out of guilt and because of motherly reasons. And yes, I'm not being helpful, I agree. My brother has very good convincing skill that he will get anything and everything by being adamant and playing the victim card. I was blinded by that so long as I felt it was wrong not to support him. Not anymore. Comment 2. Exactly. Abrupt stopping won't make things better. The worst case scenario would be he would borrow money from nearby people under the name of my mom, myself, and everyone might start queuing up at the house. It happened once, although for a small amount. Now, for the update. Thanks for sticking around for this update. A lot has happened since the last post, so my brother's divorce hearing came and went. I caved and sent the money. But here's where things took a turn. The day of the hearing, my brother didn't show up in court. Instead, he was with his soon-to-be ex-wife, reconciling. They decided to give their marriage another shot. I felt like a doormat, having funded what was supposed to be the end of their toxic relationship, only to find out they're trying again. But wait, it gets worse. My brother and his wife came up with this plan to start a new business together, and guess who they expected to bankroll it? Yep, me. They presented it as a fresh start, a way to mend their relationship through a shared goal. I was skeptical, but the thought of them being independent was tempting. I agreed to help with a condition. This would be the last time. The business started off well enough, but soon the cracks began to show. My brother was slipping back into his old ways, spending recklessly and neglecting the business. His wife was no better, focusing more on her personal luxuries than on the business's needs. I watched from afar, my resentment growing as I saw my hard-earned money being squandered. Then, the bombshell. My brother's wife was pregnant. The news hit me like a ton of bricks. I was going to be an uncle, but under such chaotic circumstances. My brother, who couldn't take care of himself, was going to be a father. And my mother, she was over the moon, seeing this as a blessing, a sign that things would change for the better. The pregnancy seemed to sober my brother up for a while. He cut back on the smoking and drinking, threw himself into the business. But old habits die hard. One night, he got into a fight at a bar, landed himself in jail. My mother bailed him out using the last of her savings. I was furious. I refused to pay his legal fees this time. That's when my brother did something I never thought he'd do. He sold the business, the one I had invested in, without telling me. He used the money to settle his debts and put some aside for the baby. He didn't apologize, just said it was necessary. I was done. I cut him off financially, told him he was on his own. The aftermath was messy. My brother's wife left him again, unable to deal with the financial instability. My brother was alone, broke, and expecting a child. My mother was heartbroken. Torn between her sons, I was conflicted, feeling both relieved to be free of the financial burden and guilty for abandoning my family when they needed me. But something had to give. I couldn't keep living for others, sacrificing my own well-being. I started therapy, worked on setting boundaries. I still talk to my brother, but it's different now. I'm learning to say no, to put myself first. It's not easy, but it's necessary. And that's where we are now. My brother is trying to pick up the pieces of his life, and I'm trying to rebuild mine. It's a slow process, but I'm hopeful. Thanks for reading. My girlfriend demands satisfaction in bed, but when I'm sick, she doubts my love. So I let her chase a new job and find out she's been cheating with a coworker. Then I cut her off and show her what it means to lose someone who cared. I have been with my girlfriend for over a year. We have had a good intimacy life, but there was one instance where I finished quickly and lost my heart-on, which has never happened before. I felt embarrassed and ashamed, and when I communicated this to her, she became angry and demanded that I make her orgasm. After some passive-aggressive comments, she realized she had hurt me and tried to turn me on again, resulting in her orgasm and a change in her mood. A few weeks later, I was sick and didn't feel like having intimacy. She jokingly mentioned that I owed her intimacy, but I didn't think much of it. The next week, I tested positive for a UTI and couldn't have intimacy. She got upset, thinking it was suspicious, but chose to believe me. She said that if she had known, she wouldn't have come over because she was sick and would have preferred to rest at home. I found this strange. She tried to convince me to have intimacy later that day, but I had to decline multiple times. The following day, she sent a message apologizing for getting upset about not having intimacy and said I should be flattered. But this doesn't feel like a genuine apology and seems passive-aggressive to me. Am I overreacting, or is there something not right here? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I won't excuse her bad behavior, and she 100% needs to understand that you have feelings, and she needs to be kinder. What I can say on her behalf is that she is very clearly a very intimacy person, and it might be hard for her to be around you without being aroused. We are, after all, animals first and foremost, and she can learn to control herself a bit more and not try to coerce you into intimacy a lot more. Comment 2. Dude, she's very clearly using you for intimacy. Please don't stay in this relationship. You're more than a weenie to satisfy someone with. She's making you feel like shoot, so you'll have intimacy with her and she can get off. It's manipulative, and she's a shitty girlfriend, if she can even be considered that. Yeah, something's not right here. You're dating trash who treats you like trash. Now for the update. Thanks for your comments on my last post. So let me tell you what's been going on since then. The other day, my girlfriend came over and things got weird. She started talking about how she's been feeling neglected and how our relationship is unbalanced. She said she's always the one initiating everything and that I just go along with it. I didn't know what to say. I mean, I thought things were fine, but she was clearly upset. Then, out of nowhere, she tells me she's been offered a job in another state. It's a big opportunity for her and something she's always wanted. She said she's thinking about taking it. I was stunned. I didn't see that coming at all. It felt like she dropped a bomb on me and just waited to see how I'd react. I asked her what that meant for us, and she said she wasn't sure. She said she loves me, but feels like she's the only one trying to make things work. That hurt. I've been trying to, just in my own way. But before I could even defend myself, she said she needed time to think and left. The next few days were a mess. I couldn't focus on anything. I kept thinking about her leaving and what it would mean for us. I felt like I was getting walked all over again, and I didn't do anything about it. I just let her talk and didn't stand up for myself. Then, my buddy called me. He said he saw my girlfriend out with some guy from her work. They looked cozy, laughing and touching each other's arms. My heart sank. I confronted her about it and she got defensive. She said they're just friends and that I'm being paranoid. But something didn't feel right. I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. I checked her phone when she was in the shower. I know it's wrong, but I had to know. And there it was. A bunch of messages with that guy. Flirty stuff. Plans to meet up. I felt sick to my stomach. When she came out, I confronted her. She tried to lie at first, but I showed her the messages. She broke down, saying it was nothing serious, just some harmless flirting. But I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. We had a huge fight. She said she's tired of always being the bad guy, and that I never fight for her or our relationship. She said maybe it's best if she just takes the job and leaves. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to beg her to stay, but another part felt like maybe this was for the best. The next day, she was gone. She left a note saying she's sorry for everything and that she needs to do this for herself. She didn't say if she was coming back. I was left there, feeling like a fool. I had let her walk all over me, and now she was gone, maybe for good. I talked to some friends about it, and they all said it might be a good thing. They said I need someone who respects me and doesn't make me feel like I'm not enough. It's hard to hear, but maybe they're right. So that's where I'm at now. She's gone, and I'm here trying to pick up the pieces. I don't know what the future holds, but I hope I can find someone who won't make me feel like this. Someone who'll treat me better and not just leave when things get tough. Thanks for reading. If you liked this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.